Okay, this begins the open session meeting of the Palo Alto Unified School District Board on August 23rd, 2022. The board met in closed session and voted 4-0, to approve settlement agreement related to special education matter PAUSD SE 2223.01 in the amount of $152,000. And we voted 4-0 to approve settlement agreement relating to special education matter PAUSD SE 2223.02 in the amount of $120,000. Okay, so welcome. I want to take a second to welcome our new student board reps. We have Miss Sia from Pali and Mr. Pan from Gunn. And I think that we are starting with their reports, yes?
Approval of agenda order.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As you can see, Mr. Dauber's not here, so I am presiding. Let's start with approval of the agenda order. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve the agenda order.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, great. Student preferential votes. You guys can vote first.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. And colleagues?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. And I'm an aye. So agenda order approved. Thank you. Student board members, so you all can decide who wants to give us a report first.
Okay. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Daniel, and I'm the Gunn Student Board Rep, and it's very nice to meet all of you here. Over the past few weeks, Gunn has held many school-wide events. Our first major event was the freshman orientation, where our new wave of freshmen were introduced to Gunn's culture and campus. First, all freshmen sat in the Spring and Break Theater and listened to Gunn staff talk about Gunn spirit and participated in our Yell competition. Afterwards, junior Titan ambassadors toured the students around the campus. And lastly, the students collected Gunn swag like water bottles, t-shirts, stickers that were prepared by the student council members. In the first week of school, Gunn had 2 periods of assembly available for students to go to Spingerberg to listen to speakers. In the first assembly, Gunn invited Tim Alexander, better known as TA, to speak about drive, growth, and hope to the students. He inspired a lot of us at Gunn by talking about his past experiences and how he grew through it. One important lie that I remembered was that it doesn't have to be easy, it just has to be possible. And that inspired a lot of students at Gunn to strive for what they want to do. The second assembly welcomed Gunn's assistant principals and other staff members to give the students a disciplined talk and also to explain the changes in class periods in the Gunn schedule, like self and how it's going to work with study hall. Next, we had the Welcome Back rally, where students gathered in our senior quad during lunch and assembled with their grades to play Finish the Lyric. It's basically a game where we play like a part of a song and we would have to finish by yelling out the lyrics. The seniors took first place, while sophomores and juniors tied for second, and freshmen took last place. Following the Welcome Back themes, last Friday, we also had the Welcome Back dance with the theme of the summer sunsets. And over 720 people signed up, which was a lot compared to the past dances. And additionally, we're also adjusting to construction on our school campus in our back cave, main office, and also cafeteria sections. The lunch line was moved into the bottom of the new P building built years ago. The main office has also moved into a new place in the E building. Coming up is the Fall Sports Rally this Thursday. Gunn sports teams will gather in the gym to talk about their season plans and goals, and also to recruit new members to their team. And this Wednesday, we also have the Welcome Back Social. We'll invite people and they can socialize. We also have the Gunn dance and cheer team performing in front of the school for the Fall Sports Rally. And finally, the most important event coming up is the Gunn vs. Pali football game coming up. It's September 9th, yes, and I think we all know that Gunn is definitely better than Pali.
So that's the year it's going to be.
Thank you so much for that, Daniel. Hello, everyone. My name is Johanna Sia. It's pronounced like Joe and Hannah put together, and Sia, one way you can remember is like see ya later. I am a senior, and I'm the PALI Student Board Representative for this year. PALI has had a lot of excitement in the past couple weeks, so I'm happy to share what's been going on. We started strong with our new student orientation the day before school. We had over 60 Link Crew leaders help tour our new students around campus, get their pictures, and introduce them to everything they need to know about PALI. Our first day of school was definitely a memorable one for our seniors. Our class all came to campus with our camo, per PALI tradition, and gathered on our newly painted senior deck to take a class photo after school. We also got the chance to hear from Timothy Alexander, also known as TA, on our second day of school, who brought energy and motivation to start off the school year. I know I and many other students were moved by his story and message about perseverance and resilience. On our first Friday, students enjoyed an extended lunch with free ice cream and chips, as well as a rally featuring performances from the trinity of PALI cheer, dance, and pep band. At least on my part, I think it was great getting to see the spirit of PALI return and hear the classic PALI songs such as Green and White and Land of a Thousand Dances. PALI ASB has also geared up since school started in preparation for the year ahead of us. We are starting freshman elections this week. I've already seen so many amazing, colorful posters all over the school. And our 4 freshman officers, the president, vice president, and 2 senators, will be elected by Thursday. Class councils have started to meet and prepare for an early spirit week ahead of us, planning float designs, class shirts, and prepping for class dances. The ASB Spirit Commissioners are hosting freshman spirit meetings in the meantime. Our ASB Diversity and Wellness Commissioner also hosted the new student luncheon in the PAC foyer last Friday for students new to the districts so they can ask questions and get to know new people. Pizza was served and the PALI admin had a chance to introduce themselves. ASB is also accepting club applications and preparing for our club day on September 7th and 8th. As for other school life events, PALI Theater's Thespian Board revealed their fall and spring shows last Tuesday. I am personally very excited to announce that PALI will be doing Radium Girls for the fall and Mamma Mia for the spring show. Radium Girls is starting auditions next week, and I'll have to keep you updated for Mamma Mia in the spring, where PALI dance, choir, theater, and instrumental will join forces to put on a wonderful show. The PALI speech and debate team started practices for varsity members last week and is hosting their kickoff party next week in the MAC to celebrate the beginning of the new season, which includes the launch of our brand new Extemp squad. Mr. Klein recently announced the Principal Advisories Committee, or PAC, to PALI students to join and share their input and concerns. One point of student concern that has already been brought up was the heartbreaking announcement of study hall, which will replace the extended lunch for students that did not have advisory for that week. Students are also adjusting to the tower building construction. While we got a wonderful tour of the new layout in our In Focus Welcome Back video, it's still difficult getting used to the new changes. I personally got the chance to visit the new Wellness Center location in the Portables, which is fortunately much larger inside than it looks, and has retained its welcoming and relaxing atmosphere with comfy furniture, a snack station, and student art on the walls. PALI Athletics has also kicked off their fall season with tryouts happening for sports such as field hockey, cheer, and dance. Finally, as Daniel mentioned, in a Palo Alto head-to-head, the Gun and PALI football teams will be playing against each other at Gun High School. I mean, on my part, I think PALI will be taking home the victory, but we'll just have to wait and see. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Nice to have students back here for our meetings. Dr. Austin, I think you're up next.
Okay. After listening to these two, I'm trying to decide if I want to attend or skip the game. I don't know. I might watch from afar. I like it. Hey, it's our first meeting since returning, and I just want to thank everyone. We had a great kickoff for the entire school district. It's known here historically as Chow Down, but what it is an opportunity for the entire district to come together. We do have a breakfast in the morning, followed by a program. Really spent time this year talking about the theme of builders and building each other up. It's been a couple of years of some tension and a lot of decisions that had to be made along the way and differing opinions across the entire country. It's time to get back to celebrating and honoring our folks here. And I think the system that we're trying to get into, it's building a culture is hard, and it's harder when you have unforeseen challenges thrown in the middle of it. But I'd sure love to get us back to the culture that we were starting to build right before the closures. And the idea here is that celebrating others doesn't have to come from a office, a person. It's something that we're going to share. So any individual in our organization can share and celebrate the success of somebody else based more on attributes than necessarily an accomplishment. And again, really learned so much from speaking with our students last year who said they don't want, of course, I'm talking in generalities, I'm sure this is not true of everyone. They're not looking for recognition for a number on something that they earned. They're looking more for, you know, can you value the person I am? Can you value the things that I do to make the world a better place? And I think that's a great place for our headspace. The return to school this year, I've got to tell you, the first week of school felt like we were in November. It looked like school. Even kids who had not been to school much, because they're still little, looked like they knew where they were supposed to go. And the classes felt good. And the staff at Palo Verde, really Herculean effort for them and for everyone involved in the move to the temporary campus. And I did visit those classrooms just about every day once the teachers came back. And it's true that their belongings were moved. It's less true that they were delivered and set up for them, right? And that was never the promise, but it's a reality that teachers were there, and they were there over the summer setting up and getting ready. And it went from impossible. The first times I walked in those classes, it looked like, wow, this is a big job, and the teachers looked so frustrated. And then you revisit on the first day of school and everywhere in between and see it look beautiful. And the kids were just in a classroom doing what kids are supposed to do, and teachers were teaching, and it just worked. I want to thank everyone who's behind the scenes that gets our schools ready, anywhere from our tech department to our custodians, the food service. Everyone that when you show up and things just look right, you forget that's not an accident. They look right because other people did it, and you may not even know who they are, but they show up and they do that work. And then finally, I'd like to thank the entire team who put together our professional development day, which was yesterday, for our employees, the work that goes into that and the logistics. And then we just thought we'd throw a power outage in just to see what we could do with that. We relocated an entire school for professional development to another school. Because why not? Yeah, we can do anything now, but really appreciate everyone's work that goes into getting these things in place and getting us off to a great start. That's it.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we're moving on to open forum. Currently, there's only 2 names down for closed session items, but they weren't here to speak before closed session. So I suspect that they might have wanted open forum. So I'm gonna call names, and if they're here, we'll give them 3 minutes. And Ms. Lau, someone over there is going to do a 3-minute timer for us? Yeah, okay. Christoph Luz? Leitzer, thank you.
Thank you very much. I was here before in June, and I was bringing the petition for the school buses from Stanford West. And last June, I thought the situation is bad. I had like 3 kids that going to Nixon from Stanford West, which is already quite a long commute. But now I want to talk about this year's situation. And this year's situation is really bad because now we have 1 kid which is going to Fletcher, 2 kids which are going to Nixon. So the normal day looks like this. 7:40 we leave the house. 7:50 we arrive at Nixon. Then about 8 we arrive at Fletcher, and about 8:15 we are back home. This is the morning. Morning, relatively straightforward. Now the afternoon. 1:50 we have to leave the home. About 2 o'clock we arrive at Nixon, if the traffic allows, of course. If the traffic is bad, it might be worse. Then at 2:05 there's first grade kid dismissal. So now we're there, we wait with the first grade kid until we can take them home, but we can't take them home right away because we have to wait till 2:30 for the fourth grade kid dismissal. So it's already 30 minutes just waiting around at Nixon till we can pick up both our kids. Then we have to drive to Fletcher, so 2:40 we are at Fletcher. And now we're waiting for the Fletcher kid. At 3:15, they have the 6th grade dismissal, so we have to wait till 3:15 till they finally dismiss the 6th grade, and then we're returning home 3:40. So it's over 2 hours every day just to drive there and back. So it's over 5 miles from Stanford West to Fletcher School, and we are not the only family. Like last time you might remember, I brought the petition last time. There were over 40 families that signed a petition. It's an extreme commute, and it's every day. So this is like so much lost gasoline, lost time, stress, also stress for the parents. So I would strongly suggest if there's a way for a solution, all the parents would be happy to pay more to support like higher school bus salaries. If this is the only issue, why no school bus driver can be found. But it's really like, it is a stressful situation right now. And it's, if you don't have a stay-at-home parent, it's very, very, very difficult to somehow arrange all these pickup and commuting times. Yes, this is my main comment, and it would be very great if there's some way to find, like we are looking for one person, a school bus driver, I think that should be possible. If we can manage like a power outage during a away day during a teacher's thing, we might be able to also manage somehow to find a school bus driver for Stanford West, which has, I think, the longest commute in the whole district. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alexander Schmidt.
Ms. Board Vice President, before we do that, could we ask Ms. Chow to just briefly?
I think there has been communication about this, but yeah, okay.
We did have a bus driver selected, and they backed out at the end. So it is a national shortage, but I do have a meeting along with Ms. Chow tomorrow with the Vice President of Stanford University and their team. And we're only talking about 2 topics, and this is one of the 2.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now, Alexander Schmidt.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you. I have 2 children in Nixon. One is in 1st grade and the other is in 4th grade. And I would like to echo Dr. Christoph Leutz's issue with the school bus. It is also for entire families at Stanford West or Oak Creek, very stressful. For everyone, the past 2 years have been very stressful, but this school bus issue is putting on a lot of stress. I work at Stanford Hospital. I'm a physician, and basically I spend my entire lunch break, even more than an hour, coming from work, going to Stanford West, getting in the car, driving to the school, and then I have to wait those 25 minutes until the 4th graders are dismissed, drive back, bring the kids home, and then go back to work if they're with friends. It is really, really stressful. My wife and I, we take turns, but I would really appreciate if all efforts are done, and it seems something is happening. I'm very thankful for that. I have even contacted Stanford Transportation Services and asked for a school bus service from their side, and they said that they unfortunately only offer charter services, which are very expensive, and this would truly be much more expensive. We'd probably pay 3 bus drivers from that money. But I think there are ways and possibilities, and like Dr. Austin said, we can do everything. I think we should really, really try to get a school bus because it would make life for the parents much easier and take away a lot of stress. I know this might take a while. Until then, I don't know why I haven't talked to Nixon. I don't know if it's like a PAUSD-wide issue, but the dismissal times from 1 or 2:05 until 2:30 is really upsetting because the wait time of 25 minutes for the children and as well for the parents that are working is actually not acceptable, and I don't understand why that happened, and if we can anyway undo this so that at least the times that we spend picking up our children and for the children waiting until their older sibling comes from school is decreased. That would really, really be helpful. And I can only echo that I've talked to many people at Stanford West that we all be willing to pay more for a school bus. I know we're a big district and it's not everybody is as financially fortunate as we are, as most people are at Stanford West, but I think having us pay a little bit more to find a median salary for all bus drivers throughout the PAUSD would be something that people would be willing to do to solve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all the public comments I have for right now for open forum. So moving on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar consists of items that are routine and will be approved in one action without discussion. If a board member requests an item to be removed from the calendar or a citizen wishes to speak to an item, it will be considered under action items. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I actually wanted to move that we approve the consent calendar with the exception of item E. So can I make a motion to amend that motion to take item E out of the consent calendar?
Second? Anyone? I mean, I guess I could.
How about we withdraw the original motion and just remake it?
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Great.
Save our
We used to call that a
parliamentary
friendly amendment.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
All right, so I make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item E.
I'll second.
Great. Any discussion?
Which one are we taking out?
E.
E, okay.
Any discussion? Okay, student board reps preferential vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Colleagues, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're going to go on to action items, and the first one up for action was 4E. Now it'll be 5A1. And it is our ad hoc committee assignments. So Ms. Lederach, would you like to address?
Yeah, I can just make a motion, then we can talk about it if we need to. I just want to make a motion to amend the committee assignments to, I think Ms. DiBrienza will be okay with this, to switch myself and Ms. DiBrienza on choice and self. So I would be on the self-advisory committee and you would be on the choice committee.
I mean, I'm happy to second
The
that.
second
but-
for that?
All right, I've seconded that. Any discussion on that? Concerns, thoughts? No? Okay. Student preferential vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Colleagues?
Aye.
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 Great. Okay. We are now on to action item 5A, which is another ad hoc committee to study public participation in board meetings. And I think Mr. Drop, yeah,
I can briefly present the item and then.
and then we'll
okay.
take public comment.
Okay. So this item was foreshadowed or really requested at the last meeting of the last academic year, following the board's vote to enable Zoom commenting. And the board asked that this committee be formed to bring back recommendations with respect to public comment or public participation generally, after board members raised concerns about inefficiencies that would result or potential abuses of process that would result from enabling Zoom comment. So the committee, which consisted of President Dauber and myself, met over the summer, and we discussed a number of different process changes that we recommended to the board. The first, I would say the first four are consistent with existing policies. Well, 3 of them are consistent with existing policies. They generally provide that Zoom commenting will be enabled. There is a procedure for alternating between Zoom commenters and in-person commenters so as not to favor one over the other. The fifth item says that the maximum allotted time for public comment is 30 minutes per item. And then the final one was basically made to align with city council's practices, which is that individuals will have 2 minutes to address the board. Right now, it's 3 minutes. So those are the recommendations by the committee.
Okay, let's start with public comment. It looks like Terry Baldwin is our only commenter, yes?
Terry, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Terry Baldwin, President of PAEA. I was actually just at a city council meeting last night. They do have 3 minutes per speaker and then go down once they get to 15.
Terry, could you pull that mic a little closer?
Oh, sorry. So at the city council meeting, they still have 3 minutes per speaker and go down in time. And they don't have a time limit per item. They do the same thing that we've been doing here, that when the first speaker is done, that's when it cuts off. So I really think we should go back to that policy. I don't think we have that many meetings with huge numbers of speakers. So I just think that we are cutting off community and educator and student voice when we limit it to 2 minutes and then limit it to 30 minutes per item. So thank you. I hope you consider that.
Thank you. Okay, to start this discussion, I wonder if I can, let's just get a motion on the table so we can then discuss from there, because this is up for action. Oh, I was just going to say, let's get a motion on the table so we talk about it from there. Did you have comments before that?
I did.
Okay, great.
Just,
We won't even start with a motion.
okay. Well, maybe I can end with a motion if appropriate. I thought this was useful and committee did good work as expected. The one thing that I didn't Is this over loud? No. The one thing that, that didn't seem to be directly addressed was the concern that at some point in the future, if there were controversial items, that there could be people, a large number of people, potentially people from outside the district, and potentially in an organized effort, essentially disrupting the meeting by, or hogging the platform, as it were, by, signing up in large numbers and potentially, disrupting the meeting, essentially disrupting the meeting, though, within the bounds of the rules. And I thought about that because that's obviously a hard problem. That's not a problem we deal with much today at all. No. And I doubt we deal with it much in the future, though, as Mr. Daubers pointed out, the problem, when it does happen, it's too late to do anything about it. And so this is sort of a gift that we would give future boards if we're able to figure out a way to address it. So the one thing I thought of that, that I'd like to throw out there for consideration is that we put in something that explicitly, that's kind of a, I don't know, I guess I call it a get out of jail free card, that explicitly empowers the board president to suspend Zoom commenting, and not try to articulate the reasons, because I think it would be very hard to articulate what the reasons were and stay within the bounds of state law. But just make it a way that we could get out of this if we wanted to. Now, I point out that I think if you read my understanding of our bylaws is that at any time, the board could vote to suspend the rules. So, even if we pass a rule, you could always do a majority vote to suspend it. But what we found, I know we found in the past, that getting majority votes, getting votes together to address things like this is a cumbersome process in and of itself. And so I worry about that. There might be variations of this where you could say, well, the board president and vice president could, jointly make a decision. That way they'd have to both agree. It's not the power, then the power isn't with one person. But that was my stab at trying to take care of this kind of black swanish type problem, and hopefully make it so that in the future things don't go off the rails. So other than that, I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that, maybe we could build it into a motion. If people think that's a waste of time, then we can throw it away.
If we're fine discussing before anyone puts any motion forward, I think that makes sense. I was thinking we should start with a motion out there, but happy to discuss. Other.
Yeah, maybe the committee thought about this.
Sure. No, so we did think about this, and I'll at least speak for myself, which is, the concern is, well, how can we build something in like that doesn't run afoul of sort of First Amendment content-based restriction where a board president would decide to limit the Zoom comment option because of the subject matter that's going to be discussed. I'm sure there's a solution around it. I couldn't think of one because in my mind, even a sort of no reason kind of thing could be interpreted. There'd be an implied reason, even because we're even talking about it right now, that would be the reason, that there would be some indication of the reason why the board president would elect not to use Zoom commenting for that meeting. Maybe there's a way around it, but the 30 minutes to me is a sort of check on the idea that a large group of people could come in and blow up a meeting in a way that is harmful or irrelevant, or people coming from out of district. In looking at past board meetings for the last couple of years, it's very, very rare that we go beyond 30 minutes for an item. It's very rare. Even at the height of when we had public commenting with respect to school closures, and in recent years, I think that was really when we had the most commenters. Very rare that we went past half an hour. So that was where half an hour came from. I certainly don't mind if that's a number that folks want to change. But to me, looking at past meetings, that seems a reasonable number. And it's good to know the city council is doing 3 minutes. When I look at comments, my perception is that many folks are done with the substance of their comments within 2 minutes. That's not true. Maybe that's a generalization, but those were sort of the benchmarks that those were based on. But to address your issue, Todd, I thought about it. We thought about it, and my perspective was the 30 minutes was a check, and I wasn't sure what more to do.
So can I throw one one other variant on the idea. I agree. I think it's an iffy call. I don't like giving power to one person to, and my understanding of what I've seen the city council do is that the board president there or the council president actually can decide how much time the person gets. I remember I went and talked to the city council once, and the presiding person said, "You only have 2 minutes." And that just seemed to be the way it went. I got 2 minutes. I asked for more time, and they said no. Another, maybe a slightly different thing that maybe would work better is to give the board president the option of prioritizing in person. And that way, if we had a big issue and there were a bunch of people here and there were other people in the ether, that the people here got priority, and then the people in the ether got less. So we still would fill the 30 minutes, no question. But it would prioritize the people who are actually here as opposed to the people in the ether. And again, I mean, these are not great solutions to a problem, and maybe they're more trouble than they're worth. I'd be happy to admit that. But I didn't want to give up on solving this problem just because it seems like a worthwhile problem to solve.
Okay, well, I have a comment that's totally different than those. When looking at this, obviously we weren't on the ad hoc committee, so we saw it for the first time when the board packet came out. And bullets 1 through 4, in my mind, really directly address the purview of the ad hoc committee and the work that we voted on in June. And 5 and 6 seem sort of outside of those bounds. Obviously, they're related to comments, but these are changes that previous boards have tried to pass and have not passed for lack of support for them. I think they are worth discussing, but I don't think they belong here. I see this is up for action tonight, so I think we have a couple of options. Given that Mr. Collins is bringing up another concern, I don't feel comfortable voting on 5 and 6 tonight. This is the first time we're seeing them, and it's a significant change. One option is to approve bullets 1 through 4 and keep working on public commenting in general in the meantime. Another option is to decide not to vote on this tonight and bring it back for possible action or maybe more discussion at our September meeting. Another option is to send these concerns back to the ad hoc committee and for you guys to try to tackle this. I don't know how much time you spent and if you feel you got as far as you could get. I agree with the concern. I hear Mr. Collins trying to solve a problem that hasn't been a problem yet, but one day when it's a problem, it's suddenly a problem. And how do you solve it without running afoul of the rules of public meetings? I don't know the answer to that, but 5 and 6 to me seem, I don't know how they made it in there. It's separate from, are we going to accept Zoom comments? So I'm not comfortable voting on 5 and 6 without it going into the hopper somewhere, whether it's at BPRC for our policy or whether we discuss it further or whatnot. 1 through 4 seems that it aligns with what we talked about last time. So I'm happy to hear any other thoughts about how to move forward. Yep.
Sure. And just to clarify, for us, it was the question of whether to accept Zoom comments was already decided by the board in June. So that's that we're doing that as of now. So the ad hoc committee's charge was really to streamline the process and make recommendations to prevent abuse of that process. So that's at least where the committee decided to make those recommendations within the scope of what it believed its charge was. But I think that if there are concerns about any of the recommendations, it makes sense to bring it back. I think it probably makes more sense now to have the discussion at the board level. I think the committee has probably taken it as far as it can right now, and I think the board input is very useful. I think we should just have the discussion at the board level. At the same time, I wouldn't want to table all 6 of these because since we are doing Zoom comment,
It's better to have some rules.
it's better to have some processes in place, and if the first 4 are amenable to everybody, we should at least move forward with those and then bring the next 2. I would ask agenda setting to bring them back at the next meeting and have that discussion.
Okay, so let me propose that I'm going to make an amendment to this. Well, actually, nothing's been proposed yet. I make a motion that we tonight approve the first 4 bullets. And if that gets a second, I'm happy for us to continue this discussion. And I will suggest at agenda sending that we bring the rest of it back at the next. So that's my motion, that we approve the first 4 bullets tonight. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, so that's what's on the table now, the first 4 bullets. Mr. Collins?
One procedural question.
Yeah.
Is this not subject to the 2-meeting rule?
Well, that's a very good question, right? That's why 5 and 6 don't sit right with me, because it's the first time we're seeing those changes.
But it's the first time the proposal's been presented.
So can I say?
But we've discussed many times before, I think.
I had the exact same question, and I sort of looked at one, and to Mr. DeDrop's point, we voted for Zoom comments in June, and so I felt like 1 and 4 were about how we are going to sort of logistically handle Zoom comments, which felt like, all right, the public's had enough opportunity to talk about this, whereas 5 and 6 felt very different to me than that. Then that's really about sort of changing the way people are commenting. So I could see I could see an argument that this has already, been open to the public, and maybe this is the second time we've talked about 1 through 4, but not 5 through 6, for sure. So
That's exactly how I thought.
yeah,
5 and
so
6 were different.
I think it's sort of, I don't know if anybody feels strongly one way or the other about, I think we're complying with the spirit of the Brown Act for 1 through 4. I don't think we are for 5 and 6.
I'm sorry.
I feel like at least we're complying with the spirit of the Brown Act for 1 through 4, since we already voted to allow Zoom comments. I don't think we are for 5 and 6.
Spirit of the Brown Act.
No,
I don't know,
not
is
the
it
Act, our
the
2
2-meeting rule, you mean?
Our
Yeah,
two.
our 2-meeting rule,
Yeah,
exactly,
okay.
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, which I recognize is a rule we could,
To be clear,
it's our
we are
rule
not
anyways.
violating the Brown Act.
Yeah, exactly,
I mean-
right.
I don't have strong feelings about the 2-meeting rule in this case. It's just, procedurally, we usually have a proposal on the table twice, unless we waive, but I don't think there's a lot at stake
So
here.
I think that it came onto action because we have discussed Zoom comments before, and we were just charging the committee. But given that 5 and 6 were in there, that felt like an addition that was different and new. And so that's what's on the table right now. I don't know if there's any other discussion tonight, or if we have student comments.
To be honest, I wasn't sure whether it was appropriate to bring this up, but I don't have a really clear consensus of where everyone is at, and I know you probably have heard a lot of comments similar to this, but I just want to state again, I'm very strongly for having Zoom commenting basically as accessible as possible. I know when we as a Pali ASB heard about the removal, we were all pretty devastated, knowing especially I couldn't even drive until this summer, so I wouldn't even have been able to go to these type of meetings in terms of transportation. And I know every student is busy on Tuesdays at 6:30. It's basically impossible to get here unless you have a lot of resources or a lot of time. And I know that I've, at least personally, been very interested in speaking at the board multiple times, and Zoom commenting has really allowed me to be able to do that when I wasn't able to do that before. I would say just very briefly on the time limits, I can understand that there might not be much of an issue for going over 30 minutes, or that there may be some sort of ruckus if there is this large group coming in, but I would advocate for having as much time as logistically possible. I know it's not easy for every student to have their thoughts very neatly written up in 2 minutes, or be able to articulate their thoughts very clearly in 2 minutes. And I think having that extra breathing room is definitely helpful, especially since we want to prioritize students in these public comments. It's really a chance for them to say what's been on their minds and kind of connect with the board, which can feel very distant. So I know there are a lot of logistical issues that could happen, and I understand that, but I would advocate for having as much time as possible for students to share their thoughts.
And I just want to point out, that's exactly the type of comment that I think the public should be allowed to make before we vote on this.
Mr. Pan, did you have any comments or thoughts on this item?
Yeah, I think I was just going to agree with Johanna on this point. I just feel like if we had the most amount of time available for the public, we can hear more from different people and different perspectives, and I think that would probably be beneficial to future meetings.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to point out one not relevant to the motion per se, but just something you said earlier. The board did vote 5 years ago for the 30-minute limit. It didn't make it into the bylaw. Remember, we talked about this at the meeting?
Yeah, I thought we didn't, yeah, oh, wait.
Yeah, it was in the minutes of the meeting
Okay,
that it said explicitly that we voted for the 30-minute limit, but then for reasons lost in the midst of time, it was not incorporated into the bylaw.
oh, interesting.
But I just wanted to,
thought
because
we
you
had
had said
rejected
it,
that
the
one,
board had
yeah.
not, but
Yeah.
the board did vote
Okay,
unanimously, I think. I can't remember.
Mr. Collins, that is a factually accurate statement. We went back through and found it. So I think this board may need to discuss that for a second. So it's not a new thing. In fact, I'm not sure it's something you need to vote on. It is in place from a previous board who did take that vote explicitly, and it is in those minutes.
well, I mean, we're not, I think that what's on the table right now is just voting for the first four things and the others to come back. So I don't think we have to make that decision right now.
But it does sound like if we decide we don't want the 30-minute limit, we should
we have to
possibly
vote on
make
that.
clear that we're overruling
We're
what was done
changing that,
before,
yes.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, wouldn't this mean that then the number 5 is, is already a policy but not a practice? And so
The only thing I think is that it's, because it didn't get, it's not written in the bylaw.
Yeah.
So it's it's complicated, because that's one of the things I wonder about this stuff. I don't really wonder, is I think what we're really doing when we vote for this is we're directing the board policy committee to incorporate it into
That's
the
right.
appropriate bylaws.
That's right.
Because my sense is even if the board votes it, if it's not included in the bylaw, it's like if a tree falls in the woods, right? I mean,
right.
it's a
As
little hard to
evidenced
say.
by
So
the
I
last
think
5
what
years.
I think when your motion passes, I think what you're actually doing is directing the board policy to incorporate,
Change the,
change the board policy. Yeah.
Would you say that after? Just-
yes, I will clarify that. Any other discussion on this tonight?
No.
So so I'm going to make the motion again. I move, wait, let me get to it. Bigger here? Yeah, my eyes.
It's 5A.
I move that that we approve the first four recommendations of the Public Participation Ad Hoc Committee, and that the BPRC amend board bylaw 9323, did I read that right?
Yep.
To align with the first four bullets. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, student preferential board vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Colleagues, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, no opposed. Okay, so we have the first four approved, and agenda setting will take back 5 and 6, deal with what happened 6 years ago and how we should go about it from now on, and perhaps bring back some version of what Mr. Collins mentioned about who might have control to cut off comment if things go sideways.
Or not.
Right.
So should BPRC also be looking at what happened 6 years ago to codify, or are you anticipating that we are going to pretend like we didn't do that? Can we even do that?
I think we'll talk about it at agenda setting. I don't think we can ignore that it ever happened, but I also think that it has not been our practice for 5 years. So I think this board should either codify it or vote to do something different.
Or could I slight variant on what you said? My guess is whatever, we'll discuss it and hopefully take action on it before you would get around to it.
I would,
Yeah, I don't know when BPRC is meeting next.
Because my only concern is
Friday, we're not doing it Friday.
don't board actions have the force of law? I mean, if we've taken board action, it sort of seems like we can't just ignore it, but
I agree.
if it's a matter of time, then.
But it doesn't come up. and-
Sure.
Yeah, so we'll talk about it at agenda setting and figure out how to move forward with these
Yeah.
other bullets. Okay. On to discussion items. 6A, General Counsel.
Shaking off the rust of
Really?
a long summer.
Dr. Austin, I think you're queuing this one up for us.
Yeah, the beauty of this one is Mr. Dauber and I had decided that he was going to lead this discussion, and
Beautiful.
one of us is here tonight. So here's what we have. We have a transition with general counsel. We have a vacancy. We did not rush to fill the vacancy because this is a time for us to see if the approach that we took is the approach this board would like to continue with, or if they'd like to make some revisions. As part of a discussion starter, Mr. Dauber had asked me to to look at a couple other options. So I did contact two of our main legal firms, DWK and AALRR, to see if there's an option to have an on-site attorney for less than 5 days, 1 or 2 days a week, that would be on-site, hours exclusively, but not our employee. If that was something that you would like to step away from, as having an employee as a general counsel. That's not a recommendation, I was just asked to do that research. Both would be happy to talk to us about possible arrangements there, and that they can structure that many different ways. And I know that you're going to have some questions and discussion about reporting structure. Another thing to consider here is if we go in the direction of an employee general counsel, are we comfortable with them having direct reports, or is that something we'd like to step away from? And then just for context, I've already shifted our new interim coordinator of Title IX under Mr. Bahadur Singh to separate from the council, so that the council would certainly provide guidance, but they would not be a direct report. There were some things there that we just learned from, makes sense to separate. So those are some of the things that we're looking for some direction from the board, and we'll either get there tonight or we won't, I don't know. But those are discussion starters. Otherwise, I'm here to interject when called upon. Otherwise, this is your discussion.
Okay, thank you. As Dr. Austin said, this is a discussion, so there are no motions. We just get to discuss. Do any board members have any comments, thoughts, questions? Yes, Mr. Drop.
Thank you. I appreciate this coming on. I think that I'm not alone in saying that the position is extremely important. I think that the position of general counsel is really a key position for us to be compliant. And, you know, when I say compliance, it's not just sort of protecting our pocketbook and making sure we're not breaking laws, but it's also protecting the rights of our stakeholders, of our students, of our families, of our employees, and of course that ends up benefiting us as a district financially in the long run. It also has the primary benefit of making sure that the people that we serve are protected. So general counsel to me is a very critical position. We've in the past done it, we've done compliance in a couple of different ways. Before we had a general counsel, we had outside law firms, and they were sort of not well controlled by us, and we saw legal spending increase. After we had a general counsel, I think the job description lays out very well what we want our general counsel to do, which is, in addition to overseeing training and making sure that we are being proactive in compliance, also sort of managing the outside law firms. 4 years ago, I believed that an in-house general counsel was the best way to go. But I think Dr. Austin raised some points, and you know, to me, looking at the job description, I would say that it would probably be a good idea to go both routes in terms of our exploration. So, I mean, the thing I think of is the benefits of an outside general counsel are that they're not within the employment structure, which means that the difficult question we've always had as a board about the reporting structure of the general counsel, we don't have some of that. There's a benefit to the oversight process of having someone outside the management employment structure. The downside or the benefit of an in-house general counsel, to my mind, is that there is more of an institutional awareness. There is more of a sort of more intangible culture fit that can be important when discussing issues of where to take litigation. So there are pros and cons, but I don't know that we have to foreclose one of the options at this stage. And in fact, I would say a great solution in my mind is, well, let's not just post a job description. Let's post a job description. Let's also do an RFP for firms for out-house counsel. And then as long as, you know, we interview everyone and we see, as long as they can accomplish the goals that we have for our general counsel, then whatever form that takes is fine with me. I mean, if it turns out that there is an outside general counsel who tells us in the interview process that they can accomplish all the goals we've set forth for our general counsel, and we believe that they can do it in a better way than in an in-house one, then great, let's go with that. So that's my suggestion to the rest of my colleagues, which is why don't we just do both and then see what we get? The second part of that is right now our structure is having a general counsel and then having a bunch of outside counsel and sort of interacting and managing. I would say that how we interact with outside counsel and how we hire outside counsel it can change from general counsel to general counsel, because since they're the ones managing that process, maybe they have different methods of accomplishing the board and the district's goals that have different ways of managing outside counsel. And so I would suggest that we revisit our outside firms and how we manage those outside firms after we've hired a general counsel, so that we then have the benefit of that general counsel in determining how they are going to interact with our outside law firms. I imagine that it would be very different if we have an outside counsel coming in twice a week or thrice a week. The way they would want to manage our outside law firms might be different than an in-house counsel who's here 5 days a week. And so instead of us making the decision on what that framework is going to look like before we have a general counsel, then trying to fit them into that, it makes more sense to me to do the general counsel first and then say, okay, how do we restructure how we're interacting with outside counsel to best accomplish the goals of the district in terms of compliance? So those are my thoughts.
Those are some thoughts. Thank you. Ms.
I have the benefit of being a lawyer.
I might actually be able to one-up you. I have the benefit of, in my previous life, actually being a general counsel at an outside law firm for public agencies. So I was an associate, and our public agency section, one of the partners was general counsel for a number of public agencies. So we had about 5 partners who served as general counsel, and then they were assisted by us as associates. So I've seen this work really well with outside counsel. It worked really well for my firm, though, because we had a section of generalists who knew sort of the analogous law of the Ed Code. We knew the public agency code. So we could answer kind of all the general questions that came up and provide support. But then we also had a larger law firm. So we had a labor department, and we had real estate, and sort of all the ancillary legal stuff that came up could be farmed out to other lawyers, but they were still under the umbrella of the same firm. So that's why it worked really well. So I agree with everything my colleague said. I think that we need a general counsel. I am less attached to whether the general counsel is an employee or an outside lawyer. But I think that hat of someone who is overarching legal responsibility, including managing any outside attorneys, whether that's within their own firm or other firms. And I really like the idea of an RFP, because I think that we should ask firms to tell us how they're going to do this. They might all have different, I know at my firm, we didn't have a day that we went and sat in the office. We were sort of on call. We answered phones, we answered emails, and if we had to go to meetings, we did, and if we needed to meet in person, we went. So it wasn't like paying someone to sit there for 2 days. It was, but you know, the fee structure, there's a lot of stuff that has to be worked out, and I think rather than us telling firms how to do it, we should go to the experts and say, how does this work for you? Because there's a lot of firms that do this. So I agree with my colleague. I think the sort of yes and approach, like let's get a job description that really gets clear on what our goals are, and do that at the same time as an RFP. That would be and I would actually say to staff, you know, if you could bring, it's hard for me to talk theoretically. I think if you could bring back a proposal to us, maybe an RFP with what you're looking for, a job description, and then we can talk about the details then and tweak it as a board if we need to. But I think the reporting structure is really important. This isn't going to work, you know, like Mr. Drupp said, this didn't work really well previously at this district before we had a general counsel. The legal fees were kind of out of control, and it's like a bunch of lawyers running around, and nobody really has their handle on the whole thing. And so sort of understanding what the reporting structure looks like, how the board would interact with general counsel, because I think that's something we've learned through this process, is that I know I at least need more clarity on if this is someone we're supposed to manage, how do we do that within the confines of the Brown Act? So I would just ask staff if you could, do you have enough information, you think, to come back to us with a proposal?
I think the short answer is yes.
Okay.
And a couple things just to remember as we look at legal bills, they fluctuate significantly. right? Some of our bills were down because we were closed for a year. Well, when you're closed, that eliminates a lot of interactions that lead to legal bills. Also, when we look historically, the Cozen report, not to bring up a thing, but that gets lumped in sometimes. We say $2 million in expenses. That alone was like $1 million. If there's a giant event, a big event, that can really skew it. And we did have some issues in special education 4 or 5 years ago that, while not completely resolved, are different than they were at that point. So there are some real differences. Just a very specific thing and something I'm really not in favor of. 4 or 5 years ago, you did have an on-site attorney for a day or two a week, but the idea was to do a specialist, and it was a special education specialist. I think that's not a good move, to tell you the truth. I think if you're going to have an on-site general counsel, whether it's an employee or from a firm, the generalist approach, and I can tell you from experience, the generalist with an education background adds a ton of value and will get more people coming through. The specialist, in particular special education, should be a specialist.
And since then, all this year, I was meeting with and her team, and it was incredibly valuable getting to work with someone who, to far away, like general counsel, most students don't. I didn't even know what that means. And I think it was incredibly to her and Mr. Andrade as well, who's the investigator, and just getting to meet these who do serve students, getting to talk with them, share our concerns, and get into where they're coming from, and more about like the eyesight form, and we got to work with them in ASB and test student perspective, and have lengths to go to make that public and have students be able to access. But I was really happy to be able to work with the general counsel. Even though it was small, I think we still impact out a form, the UCP form, that would be students all over the district. So in the sense of course, I don't know all the legal implications of hiring someone or what a means, but I do know that it is very valuable to work with this person one-on-one and having them accessible to students. Of course, I don't know if this is exactly the case, but when I'm hearing that hired attorney, it does make me wary and thinking students might not get a chance to see this person.
In this district, and he's such a great listener. We're excited about that, and that actually gives us some comfort right now that that position is filled, and in his investigator position, it will be backfilled as well. So while we have a vacancy, we also filled a really important hole tonight that could have been easily under the radar.
Yeah.
So thank you for referencing.
So Ms. Ledermerck, and then I have a comment.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing when you're thinking about bringing back a proposal. I think that what you brought up about special education, think through what would work best for that connection between a general counsel and the special is there any interaction? Is there some interaction? Is there supervision? And we can talk about it at the board level once we see kind of what your best thinking is on that. And then my second point, sorry to bring this up, is I think you need to look hard at the salary. I think that's like a beginning associate level salary. And I just think that's going to impact the quality of people that you get to apply.
Yeah, so I don't really have a whole lot of new stuff to add. You all basically said the things I was thinking about. But I am agnostic as to whether or not it's an external person or an internal. I think that we have been trying to find this right fit for a number of years, and people have mentioned the things that haven't gone well for us. I can't say if it's because it was a structural problem or a personnel problem or something else, but when we did have a special ed attorney here 2 days a week, that was one of the reasons we started talking about having a general counsel, because wow, is this the best use of our money, and are we using this person the best way we can? Nothing to say about that person, and but and then yes, our legal fees have been high, and yes, sometimes there have been for some reason, but certainly since we have had a general counsel, they have been a lot lower, and that was one of our goals. And I would hope that if you're writing up an RFP, that's one of the things that someone who knows the law is going to have a handle on those fees. And if there's other people we're talking to, because if they're a generalist, there will be, who's deciding how much time that takes, and can Carolyn just call up an attorney, and that type of thing. So I think that's a really important part of it. And I agreed about the salary. I am no attorney, but it seems like it's pretty low. And of course, we don't want to go higher than we need to go, but I also want to make sure we get good options. So those are my thoughts. Any final? Yep.
Just one final thing, which is the issue of access or accessibility to the general counsel. That was always sort of the reason why institutions preferred in-house general counsels, because they were there, they were in the room. I think at least I've seen things change over the last couple of years now that Zoom is so widely used in the legal field. I mean, every court I've been to has a Zoom option so far. I mean, it has been very well adopted sort of seamlessly. I think that has changed the perception on the lawyer's end of what it means to be accessible. And I think you might find that with an outside general counsel, they could be just as accessible as an in-house general counsel, but potentially with cost savings or a specialization or breadth of knowledge that we might lack. So again, the two-pronged approach might work quite well.
Last thing, the other thing I thought of, we'll finish this item at some point. The same thing that Ms. Ledermerrick said about sort of our relationship to the counsel, to the general counsel, whoever they are. I think that because we are not on site all the time and we hand over day-to-day management to you, at times that has left us with well, when are we ever talking with our general counsel? And if some of the reasons we have them is to make sure we are compliant across the board, when do we get FaceTime with them to talk about those things? And I know the Brown Act plays a role too, right? Or any of those closed session, just the board and the general counsel, or is that open session? Is that with you? But I want us to continue to think about that and make sure that we feel that we have a connection in that way. Yeah.
Are you done?
Yep.
Just to point out one thing, and maybe you incorporated this in your thought. My understanding of the bylaws, and I haven't looked at this one in a long time, is I don't think anybody, by the bylaws, the only board member that can directly consult the district lawyer is the board president. So, and I don't think that's different if it's a in-house staff person or not. So I've always thought that unless we brought them into a meeting and had an item to discuss with them, that they weren't available to discuss.
And I think that's my concern. It feels very disconnected, and it feels like if there was something that the general counsel thought we should know, is that through just the board president? Is there ever a time besides an annual evaluation that the board and the general counsel are just talking in a room, the six of them?
Yeah, well, so maybe a challenge is there's very constrained topics for closed session, right? And kind of how are things going, I don't think fits under any of the categories. So it may be that we're hamstrung by the Brown Act on this.
But maybe we can set something up as a board, we could maybe say there's monthly meetings, and then we can give our questions to the board president. Like maybe we just, I think, need to be a little bit more mindful about it with however we proceed.
That's my concern too. Okay. Whew. Now we're actually done with that one for now. Thank you. So we'll look forward to you bringing something back to us next time. Okay, we are moving on to a budget update.
Okay, we're a little behind pace, so Carolyn, you have 22 seconds. I'm just joking. So Carolyn and Sharon have put together tonight's proposal, and that, spoiler alert, it's all good news. So there you go. Ms. Chow?
Thank you, Dr. Austin. I think that sums it up pretty nicely, but I'm going to give the board just a bit more detail. Tonight's presentation is on the closing of the books for our 21-22 fiscal year, as well as an update on the current year's budget following the state's budget adoption. And as a side note, we bring each year's budget to the board, before the board, 4 times a year. So the first 3 times are budget adoption and our 2 interim reports. And at those periods, we are estimating our annual revenues and expenditures. We make adjustments at each reporting period and based on the current information we have at the time as to where we believe that we will end up our budget at the end of the year on June 30th. Tonight with the unaudited actuals is the 4th and final review of the 21-22 budget. June 30th is passed and the books are closed on our 21-22 budget, which all means that we are no longer estimating revenues and expenditures. Instead, the information we are presenting to the board tonight reflects where we actually ended the year with our budget. So there's a lot of data in our board packet, but I do want to share with you some of the key takeaways. Where we ended the year, the difference from estimated actuals back in June to where we actually did close the books are about just a hair over 1%, which is very good considering the size of our budget, and that translates to just over $3.5 million more in our general fund balance. The next key item worth noting is that our property tax AV growth is currently at 3.94%. The reason I'm mentioning this, and I will also put in a side note that we have a meeting this Friday during BPRC actually with the assessor to get a final update on that. But this number is very different than the COLA from the LCFF and the state district. So I just wanted to point that out for the board's attention. We also received one-time funds in the 22-23 budget, and then those will be added at first interim. Next slide, please. So here's a summary of our annual revenue and expenditures and the changes between estimated actuals in June as to where we finished things up in with our unaudited actuals. As you could see on the income line, we did have a little bit less, about $6 million less in income, and this is largely due to some of the funds that we received that were unexpended, and we deferred that revenue, and it will be added back to the budget for 22-23. The same is true with expenditures. A lot of these expenditures were tied to those funds, to that revenue that we didn't expend, and they will be carried forward into the next year's budget. So taking both of those reduction on the income side as well as a little bit greater reduction on expenditures, that's what nets out to our $3.5 million in savings for the last year. And to take us into a bit more detail on those revenues and expenditures, Ms. Yu will walk us through that.
Thank you, Ms. Chow. Good evening, board members. What we have in here is the changes to our revenue right after we close the books. So the notable items primarily attributed to the change in revenue are the federal funding, state funding, and the local revenue. These funds consist of one-time funding and restricted grants, and some of it are donations. These are restricted funds, therefore, they are unspent. Anytime that there is an unspent dollars, we are required to defer the revenue into the following year. That's why we have a change from our revenue from our estimated actuals when we adopted the budget. Next slide is the changes in our expenditure. The two driving factors in the expenditure changes come from the books and supplies and other services, which consists of our contracted services, mileage, travels, and professional services, due to that these expenditures are tied to one-time grants, restricted grants, and some of it are donation. This expenditure, same as the revenue, will be added along in the first interim when we come back and report out. On the next slide, this slide illustrates the changes we've learned so far since the budget was adopted at the state level. Most of these changes are one-time funding where we receive a revenue with corresponding expenditure tied to a plan. And also, we did look into some of the staffing increases that we do have incurred when we adopted the budget up to now, and there's some expenditure that we budgeted that it's not going to materialize this year, like the virtual independent study program, and then also the contribution to the child development into this year. And to wrap up our presentation tonight, I'll turn it over to Ms. Chow.
Thank you, Ms. Yu. So in the spirit of celebrating others, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to show you this great team of builders. They're responsible for all the work that went into preparing the data, closing the books, and I have a lot of gratitude for this team. So in terms of what's coming up next, at our next board meeting, the unaudited actuals will be brought to the board for approval. At August 30th, we do have our fiscal advisory committee, so that's next week. And then we move into looking at first interim, which is our 22-23 budget, and that's in our December board meeting. And then we switch back to the 21-22 budget, and we have our final audited financial statements when the auditor presents that to the board in January. And that concludes our presentation this evening.
Thank you. Thank you both very much, as usual. Any questions or comments?
No public comment?
No public comment, unless something is updated in the last minute. Nope.
I have one.
Great.
Okay. Really just an observation. AV growth was 4?
Just under 4, but I do expect to have that number updated on Friday when we meet with the assessor and controller.
So the interesting thing, I mean, and I've been watching these budgets for probably a dozen years, and this has never come up before. Normally, one of the benefits of being a basic aid district is that our revenue growth is tied to assessed value growth, a growth of the value of housing in the community, which per Prop 13, everybody goes up 2% except for transactions, which are mark to market. That has historically always yielded a number that is higher than the rate of inflation. This year, because the logic of AV growth is independent of, it's capped at 2% for all the houses that don't sell, so 2% is 2%. When inflation was 2%, that was fine. When inflation is 7%, you get a number like 4%, and our revenue growth is substantially less than the rate of inflation, which is something that hasn't happened in my dozen years watching this, probably hasn't happened in the past 25 years, maybe not in the past 40 years. So it's an interesting uncharted water. I'm not sure what it means, but it makes me feel more like we're in a somewhat more defensive position than we have been necessarily in the past, because we're seeing inflation, cost of everything, go up faster than our AV growth. Is that a correct interpretation of what you presented?
That is most absolutely accurate. Even if that number were to come up to a full percent, say come up to 5%, we would still be grossly less than the rate of inflation.
I want to piggyback, I think, on Mr. Collins' point. We saw tonight there was a small increase of like $375,000 in property tax from estimated actuals to unaudited actuals. What percent increase does that represent? I mean, do you have any idea? I'm just trying to sort of.
It's about a 0.2%.
Okay, so 0.2% gave us about 375. Because I was looking at when we look at the out years and sort of the 5-year plan, we're looking at deficits of $5 million, $6 million. It's hard to see us making that up purely in property tax growth. I mean, your budget's, I think you said 1.88 net property tax increase is what you use in the budgets. And so, I mean, we'd have to go up lots and lots of percentage points to make up $5-6 million. So that, to get at the defensive posture point, it seems like we're going to have to start talking about where we cut expenditures. We're not going to make it up in property tax, adding inflation into that for sure. Am I reading that right? I can't do the math exactly, but 0.2%, 375. I mean, we're looking at
Yeah, it's a tiny.
a couple $1 million for a whole percentage point of increased property tax.
Okay, any other?
Could I just make one, I just want to, you as
Piggyback
usual,
on my
you provoke-
piggyback?
Well, you provoked my thinking. So, yeah, historically, if you look back to, the AV growth since 1980, it has, and we've been blessed. We're probably one of the only places in California where AV growth hasn't been negative since 1980 in any year, but it has been zero, and it's been substantially close to zero for as many as 2 or 3 years in a row. And I hadn't really ever thought about it, but if you're bumping along at, 1-2% a year, and you're getting, say you get 4 over 3 years, kind of bad scenario. And inflation, say, lower than it is now, 5%. That means you got 4% growth in revenue and 15% growth in expenses. That's an 11% gap.
And we're already looking at a 5-year budget without years with a $5 million deficit.
I mean, so we're talking, and who knows what, but, when we see about risk of recession, we see about housing prices falling all over the country and, a real pullback because the interest rates and mortgage rates rise. I mean, I know you've always got the hatches battened down in your department, but it does sound like it's just a different type of problem than the problem that we've gotten used to thinking about. So I hope you'll both, Dr. Austin and everyone kind of keeps playing that to us, because I think we're all going to have to adjust our thinking as we kind of go through this period.
Sorry, we're raining on the good news parade.
Seriously.
No.
No, it's true.
But it was a great presentation.
Yeah, it was it. We're very happy.
Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, we are not happy with the inflation.
This is me and Todd happy.
Okay. No, this is as good as it gets. Okay, thank you both very much. I'm sorry, did you guys have any comments? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, on to 7A, the ad hoc committee update.
Well, we really thought you were going to be happy on this one, so we'll see. So,
Is she going to talk about inflation?
no, but we are going to talk about involvement in decision-making and in our effort this year.
That we like.
We finally have our feedback under us. So this is going to start to look the way we really want to make decisions and bring things forward. Part of our main goal here is to bring things to you after they've been discussed in broader groups and beat up a little bit before they get here. And now with the changes in conditions, we can do that. And we're going to take full advantage. So, John, it is all you.
Good evening. I'm here to share about some ongoing work with the ad hoc committee. PAUSD launched 8 ad hoc committee for the school year to build upon foundation of excellence. Okay, there we go. Aligning with the board policy, each committee serves to make recommendations representing diverse viewpoints. Committee application process was created to promote inclusive stakeholder input as applicable. To systemize the process, a milestone checklist was created using various frameworks while gathering input from the entire leadership team. Adapting the Promise Toolkit, each committee lead was provided with the project management tool, incorporating the milestones and relevant board policies. Using these tools, the committee lead developed the timeline and plan of action. Each meeting will end with a group writing activity that builds towards consensus. This process is exciting as it capitalizes on collaboration that will serve our diverse learners. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to one of our committee lead, Mr. Espiritu, to share his experience.
All right, good evening. Herb Espiritu, Director of Student Services, 2 months in, still have my job. All right. So, oftentimes, as a teacher, site administrator, and now active parent in my district, I would always wonder how important decisions at the school district level were made without input from pertinent stakeholders. We tend to question those decisions, and I, for one, have been guilty of not getting enough input from stakeholders. Being new to Palo Alto Unified and having just referenced those experiences in the education system, I'm excited that Palo Alto Unified School District has an ad hoc committee process that will help guide our board in making the best decision for our students, families, and all of our stakeholders and our community partners. As leaders, gathering information and input from stakeholders so that we can make the best decision is really all we can truly ask for. So thank you. I'm really excited to be part of this process for all these important committees. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not sure if we have any, this is the first time we're seeing all these at a board meeting and the proposal we have in front of us. But I don't know that there's much to discuss. I think we all requested these ad hoc committees and are excited to move them forward. So if anyone has any comments, yep. Ms. Sia?
I actually had a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
I was really curious about just like the amount of student input that would be available and present in those committees. I did see that there were 3 available to students. I believe it was advisory, self, the bell schedule, and celebrating and building up others. I did personally sign up to be part of the advisory and self ad hoc committee since I am definitely very passionate about that and I have been hearing concerns about it for a few years. I was just wanted to know what role students would have since I know a lot of students are usually wary when it comes to being part of committees, fearing that they may not be heard or that their concerns might not be taken seriously. I don't want to say that this is like fact or anything, but I do know a lot of students were very frustrated with the result of the bell schedule committee from previous years, feeling as if their concerns were not heard. Of course, I was not part of that, so I don't want to speak on that fully, but I just want to kind of get an understanding of that so that my peers and I understand that these committees are really serving us. I think a lot of it's just like belief and trust. I don't like distrust these ad hoc committees. I'm actually very excited about them, but I just want to kind of get to know that process since I think the instructions on Schoology were a little vague.
Okay, I don't know, Ms. Chow, if you have anything.
Yeah, Dr. Shea, you can take that.
Student stakeholder input is a very important part of the process. And I think at the end of the day, we're here to serve the students. And so you hold the seat just as much as the adult in the room. And we are actually working with the committee lead to review all the application that came in from the student side. And we're taking it very seriously. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, colleagues? Okay, great. Let's move on to the PAUSD promised mental health item.
We're excited about this item, and this is something we're going to try to do is to bring back items and reports that align directly to our PAUSD promise. Mental health is one of our 5 priority goals. And tonight, with just a quick update, because we do have some good progress, we asked Ms. Yoshinaga to come and give a preliminary report.
Great, thank you, Dr. Austin. So last April, the board approved a proposal to build a comprehensive school-based mental health program. Thank you very much. The model focuses on establishing an in-house program of mental health professionals that are PAUSD employees. The goal is to create a consistent, accessible, and sustainable mental health and wellness plan that supports a positive school climate and a community for students, staff, and families. So the great news is we have launched. We are on our way. We had 13 mental health therapist positions, and we have hired all of them before school began. Yes. So thank you to HR Classified. We have supported all of our elementary and our middle schools. So we have 8 of our elementary schools have therapists 5 days a week. And we have 4 of our smallest elementaries sharing 2 therapists, so they're half-time. Each middle school has 1 therapist 5 days a week. And this is an increase in services for most of our school when they had CASI counseling last year. Additionally, we are growing our wellness centers at our middle schools. So all 3 middle schools have a space, have therapists, and it's a really nice place to self-regulate and receive strategies and tools for supporting mental and health and wellness. As you know, our high schools, mentioned by our student board members, we have our fully functioning wellness centers already, each with a PAUSD licensed therapist, a wellness outreach worker, and also 3 contracted CASI therapists. That's the one level that we continued with CASI. Currently, Cassie's been unable to fill 2 of the total 6 positions. So we just filled one of those positions. We posted the position and filled it with a PAUSD employee. So we have one more opening for the high school. So we're really excited to bring that gentleman on board starting in a couple weeks. And so we're just continuing to interview for that position tomorrow, the next day. And Cassie is also going to continue to recruit. So we're doing that simultaneously. So. We have a great support system. We have a mental health and wellness clinical supervisor that provides support for our new therapists. So all of our little newborns, we're really wanting to give them that training, that ongoing support. They have individual and weekly sessions every week that they are here. So we are really invested in making this program successful and giving them the support that they need, and because we want them to stay. And the really exciting news is that we really are mirroring what the state wants school districts to move toward, which is a school-based mental health program that's a real collaboration between our school and site administrators, our psychologists, our mental health professions, our nurses and our school counselors, and some of our community partnerships. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight 3 important components of our school-based mental health program. One, the school-based model with the in-house mental health professionals really provides students and families with a consistent and collaborative team of trusted adults who support the whole child and are part of our school community. Second, the school-based mental health program is an integrative model that focuses on weaving mental health into the fabric of the school community to normalize and reduce stigma. And then lastly, we are committed to developing this sustainable mental health and wellness program so that we can meet the evolving mental needs of our students, staff, and families. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I remember in the spring when you all presented this to us and we said, part of the reason we're doing this is because even our outside orgs can't staff. How on earth are you going to hire these people? And mazel tov. I'm really, really impressed. That's great news, and I'm sure you'll fill that last opening really quickly. Okay, any questions or comments for Ms. Yoshinaga?
Why don't we let, I do, but let's
Yep,
let them.
go ahead, Mr. Pan.
Yeah, I just want to say, it's very greatly appreciated that the board and everyone is taking this seriously. I think mental health is definitely a very important issue that needs to be addressed in all elementary, middle school, and high school. I didn't even know that there was a wellness center set up in a middle school already, and I feel that is super helpful, and that I feel is really going to greatly impact the students there. So thank you.
Thank you.
See, another reason why it's really good to have students right here with
Absolutely.
us, hearing the immediate feedback. Any other comments?
I do. I have a couple comments and a couple questions. I just first really want to piggyback on Mr. Pan's comment and say, just give a huge thank you to Dr. Austin and Ms. Yoshinaga and staff, not just for this report, but for the investment in school-based mental health. And I really want to take a moment to recognize the significance of what we're doing. You kind of glossed over it, but it's really, this is what the state's saying we should be doing. And we're, once again, at the forefront. It's another thing to say, it's one thing to say mental wellness is a priority, and it's really another thing to reflect that prioritization in the level of funding and financial investment. And we've done that at our district for a while. And we're continuing to do that to really, as they say, put our money where our mouth is. But when it comes to school-based mental wellness, we were really already way ahead of the curve in some ways before this plan. We had wellness centers at the high school. We were starting them in our middle schools. And I think it's important to point out that the combination of those things, like the significant financial investment, plus the fact that we were kind of already ahead of the game in some ways, kind of creates a natural incentive to stay the course, right? And double down on what we're doing. And I just really want to commend staff for being willing to not be satisfied. and instead to kind of look critically at ourselves and say, you know, we're doing a good job, but it's not as good as it should be. We need to try something different. And to me, this plan really takes the best of what we were already doing and builds on it. First and foremost, obviously, by bringing therapists and technicians in-house, starting in elementary school, and then also prioritizing support and training of in-house staff. And I also think, to kind of call back to Ms. Sea's point about self-advisory, you know, that's mentioned in here, and starting the ad hoc committee right now to look at self-advisory. I think it's important that we're doing these things together, because self-advisory really can be an impactful tool for positively impacting the culture and climate of our schools, because we want to be able to provide wellness support to every student in every way that they need it, and also ideally to reduce the number and severity of students who need it, right? So we want to provide care and we want to reduce harm. And I think self-advisory could be a really impactful tool that right now aren't probably as impactful as they could be. So I'm really grateful to staff that we're doing all of this right now. And just thank you so much for the work and the really mindful approach.
And I'd like to just add, I am the head of that self and advisory committee. So, Ms. Sia, you have an email in your inbox for me. I just sent it.
I'd like to just say ditto to what Ms. Lindbergh said.
You got more? And now I'm on it too, apparently. I just have a quick question, actually.
Okay.
You answered one of my questions about we found another counselor and we're still looking for one. So great. And I noticed that you said mental health screeners are priority for the fall. Do we have any sort of update on that? We're still looking for it. Have we selected it?
Yes, we've been looking at some platforms. I've been working with Ms. Conaway about looking at different universal health screeners that are maybe enwrapped in sort of an MTSS kind of platform as well. So we've been exploring a couple of things with different groups of people at the director level. So we are going to establish some committees to look at that internally.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yep.
Just a quick one. I'd be remiss if I didn't just, again, thank Genevieve Dixon and Ms. Conaway. I can't tell you how many iterations of this were created, revised, started over, and they were really tenacious about this one. And it's going to be easy to celebrate now that we were able to hire everybody, but there was real doubt about that. This was more than a leap of faith, and this very much, and one of you just mentioned this, mirrors what the state of California is suggesting people do, but watch the challenges that they are hit with. And then let's try to remember how we got through it. We pushed through before it was a thought on anybody else's radar. And it's largely because they would not stop. And I just want to tell Ms. Conaway and Ms. Dixon, if she's watching, first of all, if Ms. Dixon's watching, why? But for Ms. Conaway, who has to be here, how much we appreciate all that work, and it's going to pay off for our students.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, on to our information items. Typically, we just see if any board, there's no public comment on any of them. So does any board member want to talk about any of these 4 items? I think, Mr. Collins, you've got one?
I do. I'm going to talk about an item that I've literally never talked about before, which says a lot for me because I've talked about a lot of items, is the calendar, the board calendar. And I wanted to raise it because I think it's underappreciated as an organizing construct for our work. Essentially, it is our agenda for the year. Just like we have an agenda for the meeting, this is our agenda for the year. And constructing a good agenda is really important to figuring out how to get things done. And equally important, keeps us from being reactive because we have a proactive agenda to make sure that we can set it in advance to make sure we focus our time on the things that we think are important. So I don't think we have to go through this. I've got it printed out in front of me. I don't think we have to go through it item by item, but I did want to draw everybody's attention to it because if the thing isn't if it's important and it isn't on the agenda, that's a miss. And we need to fix that. Just like if we had something on a meeting agenda before it was posted and we didn't fix it, we wouldn't be able to talk about it. One thing that I did just while we were, in between some of the comments here is I went through the 5 promise focus areas and try to line those up against the items on the agenda. And I think that may be, and you may be able to explain some of this, but I think it may be that we should make some adjustments related to that. So for instance, I didn't see any item related to service and celebration. And I think if it's important and it's a part of one of the top priorities, we should definitely have a board item that reviews what our activity on that. So I would suggest adding something related to that. On mental health and equity and excellence, I saw one item each on each of those, including and I think the mental health one was the presentation that we had tonight. I mean, given that we only have 5 items, I would say we should visit each of them at least twice during the year. So it's just a matter of like, we should get that in now. So it doesn't, because as you know, Dr. Austin, I think everybody on the dais knows, it's like what happens is that April sneaks up on you, and all of a sudden, oh my God, we didn't schedule that, and there are only 4 board meetings left, and when are we going to squeeze it in? And then maybe you squeeze it in, but you don't really have time for it, or maybe you don't squeeze it in at all. So now is the time to get that on the agenda and make sure everybody has like months of runway. The other one is equity and excellence, which I believe relates to the SWIFT plan, right? And so I see one item related to that. I think that's important enough that we should have 2. And then on attendance, I see one that was clear, and then there was a second attendance report in April that I wasn't clear if that was related to the promise or not, if there was some other attendance report. If it is, then the attendance is on there twice, and that seems appropriate to me. So that was my main point, and if you have anything to add to the way you think about the agenda and the way you think about the annual calendar, I would love to hear it.
No, all fair observations. I'd say when we put this together, the long-term calendar is more staff work than agenda setting. Agenda setting with the president, with our bylaws, and then we include the vice president, looks at the upcoming and typically the next 2. So we're looking at 2 to 3 meetings out. That's where the focus is. So what you see is truly a skeleton. In some places, you just don't see it on here yet, but it's in our head. So for an example, the honoring and celebrating, serving and celebrating others, you're going to see that several times. There's a whole committee for that with benchmark reporting dates. They're just not on here yet. So some of this is just a matter of, we see this as a skeleton, really looking 3 out with carryovers that are just standard reports plugged in, but they're not necessarily all plugged in yet. So that's absolutely not hard to go back and put some of those back in, put a little more meat on it. But it should not be confused with agenda setting. That is a function of the board, to which I'm the secretary. This is more of a planning for the staff that does factor into the agenda setting. I hope that makes sense.
It does, and I'm familiar with the processes, as we all are. But I think getting it all kind of padded out in advance, which, by the way, I think you have moved us, during the last 4 years that you've been here, you've moved us tremendously forward in kind of this kind of forward-looking plan and getting more of a rhythm and getting these things all laid out ahead of time. So I just want to kind of help complete the process. And if we can get all the things that are important on the agenda, we look at it on the calendar and we say, yeah, all the things are there, then we don't have to worry about it. It's all there, and we just have to show up and make sure we do our job. Thank you.
Okay. Board operations. Anyone have any last minute? Okay. I have got one, in that after Chowdown, I decided that every board meeting I was going to try to acknowledge someone. And unfortunately, Dr. Austin sort of stole mine in his opener, because the Palo Verde staff and the Palo Verde parents, I mean, it's the first meeting of the year, and everyone deserves props for getting going, classrooms going. Everyone's been working so hard. But the fact that Palo Verde pulled it off, and they are existing in beautiful classrooms at a temporary campus, and that we've got buses to get them there, and that we've got curriculum happening, and we've got it all, just want to, if I had a whole bunch of little yellow hats, I would put them on all of you. So I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Chow, for the buses.
Okay, anything else?
If I can just double down on what you said, because I went by the site in, I want to say, mid-July or late July.
It's concerning, right?
And it was, everybody's laughing because it was not a confidence-inspiring journey.
No.
And there were some sharp intakes of breath and like, oh my God, how is this going to come out?
Did you call Dr. Austin too?
I don't think I had to.
I called him.
And then I had a chance to go by maybe 2 days before opening. And not only did I see it and I'm like, oh my God, this is like so much better. I had a chance to run into one of our teachers who was with her daughter there, getting her room set up. And while everything wasn't perfect, as you might expect, and she, first time at the site and everything, needed to get done, I think she felt that, an enormous amount of good work had been done, both to get the site ready, to get everything moved over, for the staff to work together to make sure that they were coming together as a team and getting everything they needed to get done. So, that was a thing that had a lot of parts that could go wrong. And for all I know, some parts did go wrong, but I think we were able to, it really is a testimony to the people at every position and every job in our district, being able to step up and do what they need to do to serve students. So I just think, it made me very happy and proud to be associated with this organization. Thank you.
Nice. I think that having had my own classroom for a number of years and knowing what it's like to set up your room at the beginning of the year and how it's exciting, but it's super stressful. It takes a lot of time, way more time than you're paid to be there for. And to know that these teachers had that job in a new place with all their stuff in boxes, is just, they're a Herculean task. So really, did you have something, Ms. Sia?
I actually wasn't sure if it was okay to bring this up since it was an information item and we moved on. Would it be okay if I commented on that?
Say more. What is it that you want to talk about? It's probably fine.
I wanted to comment on the Title IX update, but we moved on, so I wasn't sure if I was allowed to bring it up.
So you know what? Come chat with any of us about it.
Yeah, that's okay.
And I'll make sure to elevate it. Maybe I'll say what the 4 things are, 5 things are next time, so it doesn't get by you. Okay? Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.